example of what I mean. Like, we need just good
Mm,
Christian people
yeah.
to work. It's a really hard area. And um, again, these people are all in a bad situation of some kind or the other, right?
Hmm.
People don't get involved with the law in a good
Uh,
because everything's good.
uh-huh.
So I think there's just an extra need for, care and concern for those people.
All right, so today I have Dr. Baum joining me. Dr. Linda Baum is a licensed psychologist and has served on the faculty at Regent for more than a decade. She obtained her master's and Ph.D. in clinical psychology at Kent State University. In addition to the typical clinical curriculum, she focused on developing skills in assessment, forensic psychology, and teaching. Dr. Baum moved to Virginia to complete a predoctoral internship as well as a postdoctoral fellowship at Eastern Virginia Medical School. She additionally completed forensic evaluator training at the Institute of Law, Psychiatry, and Public Policy. Dr. Baum directs the Society for Forensic and Assessment Psychology here at Regent, which is a research team that we'll kind of get into and talk about. First, just Dr. Baum, thanks for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. So this is a series I kind of want to do with all of the faculty here at Regent. So you're lucky to be the first one.
Oh, I am. Okay. Well, that's good. I don't have to live up to any expectations.
Exactly. And so if you could, can we just start, maybe tell us where it was that you got started? Where did your interest in psychology begin, just in general psychology?
Well, I mean, I guess it began my first semester in college. So I took a psychology course in high school,
Uh-huh.
and I don't know, I enjoyed it, but I didn't really think much of it. I was an aerospace engineer major going into college.
Oh, wow.
So things changed pretty quickly once I got to college. I think just I think psychology called me rather than me finding psychology, right? I think
Mm.
that's what God kind of called me to do because I'm maybe gifted to that. So, um, yeah, things kind of changed that first semester, not really based on my interest so much. It's just kind of how things fell out.
Well, what is it? So, from an aerospace engineer to studying psychology, what is it that happened within that first semester that changed?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, I can say that, again, I think it was just God kind of working because, my plan had been aerospace engineering for a long time. And
Uh-huh.
in high school, I took, I took 2 physics classes and stuff. I was preparing kind of for that
Mhm.
field. When I got to college, I had to take calculus and physics as to be on that major, to be on that track, right? So I had to take those. I had to take like an orientation class. And then we could pick like one class. So the class I just picked was psychology.
Uh-huh.
And it turned out, that I was really struggling in the physics class. Math
Mm.
wasn't too much of an interest of mine either, but I was struggling with it. And it turned out that my advisor put me in the wrong class. They put me in the physics class that you're supposed to have had calc in high school for.
Ah.
And I took advanced science and English in high school, but not advanced math. So I hadn't had the right class. So I was struggling because I wasn't in the right place. So I felt like it was kind of a God thing
Mm.
that, kind of messed it up because I wasn't where I was supposed to be really. But, I think it's the same kind of analytical stuff that I was interested in
Mhm.
engineering that is still kind of what I like about psychology.
Yeah. And so, at what point did I guess I didn't even know about assessment being a clinical psychology thing until this program.
Yeah.
So, at what point did you find out about the analytical side of psychology and pursue that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's typical. I think most students have that same experience. And yeah, I didn't we had a tests and measures class in college,
Huh.
which I didn't take. I didn't even think about taking it really,
Yeah.
I probably only knew it because I have a peer who's taken it, but It was really because I was planning. It took me a while I knew I wanted to go into grad school. I was on a research team that definitely encouraged those analytical skills. But, in terms of assessment, once I decided that I was interested in corrections or forensic assessment, I started kind of looking at that area. And that's where I learned really about assessment, because that's so much of that work that it was just kind of a side effect, really. Learning about assessment prior to starting graduate school was a little bit of a side effect of being interested in forensics.
And what got you interested in forensics?
So freshman year, I quickly not only, changed my major, but my school wasn't going to be very good for psychology as a major. So I had to change schools too. And so I go back home where, my new school is more closer to home, and go to church with my family. And in the Sunday bulletin was, we need volunteers at the state psychiatric hospital if anybody wants to go. And so I was like, great. I came home to do psychology. My church is giving me the opportunity. And so, I was working at not working, but volunteering at the state hospital where I saw how important law was to the field, right? I think some people see more of the outpatient side of psychology first. And I really saw that inpatient side of things first, and they had a forensic unit that I did volunteer on for a while. So, that was where I saw the need. Not that there aren't needs for other groups too, but I just felt like the worried well was not kind of where I could be most helpful. I thought it was more with like serious mental illness with people that just really didn't have control over their situation at all.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And similarly, my idea of forensic psychology is quite vague.
Okay.
And so can you talked about, you saw the link between law and helping them. So can you talk about what that was like?
Yeah. So because it was a state hospital, there are, inpatient facilities that aren't state run. And in those facilities, if you feel like you're ill and you feel like you're not safe and you want to check yourself in, right, you can go get care. A state facility doesn't work that way. Like, to get into a state facility, you have to legally be kind of required to go there.
Okay.
And it might have been precipitated by your interest, but you can't just walk up to the door and say, hey, can you help me, right? You'd have to get in through a legal kind of process. So everybody was there either because they were on a civil commitment, meaning they just needed general treatment, but they couldn't leave in their own free will because they had been civilly committed by the court, or they were there because they committed a crime and they were there because the court said they need to be there for whether that was, pre or post adjudication, that they had to be there for a criminal legal matter. So everybody was there under some type of a legal requirement.
And so for those people who perhaps needed to be in a state-run facility like that, you saw the need to maybe through assessment provide a means for them to get into facilities like that?
I don't know, get into facilities like that because they were already in there by the time they got there, but certainly a need for assessment to determine the next step for them, right? So a need for assessment to decide what the best course of treatment is so that they can actually be discharged at some point. The need for assessment to decide if they are a risk to society, if the criminal matter is so serious that they need to be detained in some way, or need treatment in some way. So it was more kind of the next step, because so many people were kind of like stuck in there, right?
Yeah, like so what you said about if they wanted to get out, they couldn't get out of their, that makes more sense.
Exactly, right? There'd have to be some assessment to determine they can get out for that to happen.
And for doing a set, so was that your primary maybe career experience moving forward after graduating from your PhD program? Did you work in inpatient facilities like that doing assessment, or what was life like after graduation?
Yeah, after graduation, I went straight to teaching. So I got a job offer at an inpatient hospital. I got a job offer at for a research position.
Uh-huh.
But I really knew that I went into grad school knowing I wanted to teach.
Hmm.
So I turned those options down
Uh-huh.
and took a part-time teaching and kind of just praying or knowing that God would take care of it, that I didn't want to like be stuck in some job and then never get out or kind of miss my window to teach.
Uh-huh.
So I decided to just kind of gamble, assume that I could get something part-time.
Hmm.
I did. I
Yeah.
worked part-time for a year or two, lost track. And then came to Regent as full-time.
Okay. And so, okay, that's good to know. What is it that brought you to Regent? Why Regent?
I think there's a real need for Christian providers
Mm.
in this area. So, a story probably other folks have maybe heard already and are sick of hearing. Maybe I hope it's new to you, Daniel. I was doing forensic work, working in the courthouse and doing evals in grad school, and there was a young man. He was maybe, I don't know, 22, let's say. So he was a young man and he killed his child.
Mm.
And so it was a pretty, difficult case for sure. Like emotionally for me, right? Like it's a difficult case.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the evaluation with them and I need him to do what else? An MMPI. So I have him sit down to do the MMPI. He's doing the bubbles, right? And I walk by and I say, can I get you a glass of water or something? You okay? And I think he said, no, it doesn't matter, right? But later in the day, someone else who worked in the office said, wow, that was so nice of you to offer him a glass of water.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, no, like that's just, he's a human. Like he's sitting there taking this long test.
Yeah.
The RF wasn't out yet. It was the long one. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like just treating people like a human, regardless of what behavior brought them here.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's like a pretty classic example of what I mean. Like we need just good Christian people to work. It's a really hard area. And again, these people are all in a bad situation of some kind or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't get involved with the law in a good because everything's good.
Uh-huh.
So I think there's just an extra need for, care and concern for those people. And I feel like, if I can teach a couple of you every year, I know not everybody's interested in forensics, but I feel like if I can teach a couple of you every year, that's going to have a wider spread than me helping a couple clients a year. Because, it can be a pretty discouraging area too, where you don't always feel like you're making a difference. So I felt like teaching at a Christian program would be the best way to, again, I feel like God really called me to this.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that's the best way I can serve.
Yeah. You offering the drink of water just reminds me of what you do unto the least of these, my brethren, that you do.
Absolutely.
And then, so I think that's very easy to, especially working with that population, it's very easy to look at them and to, like maybe your coworkers or your colleagues at the time, and you're like, what are you talking about? This is a human being. Like we need to, and then I had a question about, so I remember when I was in the military, there's this saying, I don't know, I think it's kind of cheesy, but especially nowadays in like peacetime, but I think it was Ronald Reagan, and he said that most people go their entire lives wondering whether they made a difference or not. The Marines don't have that problem. And I remember when I was I felt like, yeah, maybe the things I'm doing are making a difference on a large scale, but I want to make an individual differences where I can see the differences being made in individuals. And so I wonder, it makes a lot of sense of what you say, like if you're a teacher and you have an influence and you help and teach people, and then they go off into forensics and then they make the differences out, like, is that more, do you feel maybe a sense of, I don't know, like for me, it was, I want to see the individual difference. Do you ever feel like that with with not being out in the community and doing forensic work on your own. Does that make sense?
It does, but like I said, I see it's just my what the difference I'm looking for is maybe different than how you envision that as a
Yeah.
provider, but
Yeah.
I see the difference every year at graduation. Or I get emails all the time, people trying to get licensure, or for whatever reason getting update, years and years later for someone that's graduated from the program, and I hear about how they're serving their community. So
Yeah.
even when it's not through forensic means, I think my service to the community I can see as being way broader than in forensics, which it's a pretty broken system. And so it'd be different if every client I worked with, I saw, good progress, but I was often met with, not progress, or, in forensic work, you're not, the court's not ruling the way you think should be ruled, or very often in forensics, you don't know what the outcome is, right? You send your report in, and they don't come back and tell you what happened with the case afterward.
Oh, interesting.
And so you wouldn't necessarily, I could feel in that moment I did a good thing for that particular client who needed the water, needed to be treated like a human, but not the same way that like you see maybe in therapy, where if you feel like consistently you do short-term therapy and you see like actual goals being met, that's very rewarding. That you don't always see that. Yeah,
that makes sense. And with your analytical side, did you ever have kind of a knack for therapy, or were you like, this isn't what I came here to do? I know that I'll do what I need to of it, but I'm more interested in the assessment side.
No, I definitely was there more for research and assessment and learning to be a teacher. Like that's why I went to school. But no, I enjoyed the therapy side of it. I think it is a little less rewarding for me. Like I can run a statistical analysis and then there's the outcome, right? Or I can be assigned an assessment and I have this beautiful report. I have this outcome. For therapy, how many times do you go home with like, there was no outcome today? I worked really hard and I prayed for my clients. I love my clients, but gosh,
you don't even know if you did anything.
I don't know if I did, right? So that's hard for me. I think some people can live in that ambiguity better than me, but I'm better with, analysis outcome. And so therapy was just not as rewarding for me, but when it's rewarding, boy, it's rewarding, right? That was just as true for me as I think anybody.
Well, who in the field of psychology, did you have any kind of role models or people you looked up to, or you just tried to read every book they wrote, or I don't know?
Obviously my mentors in the assessment field are huge. So I worked directly with Jack Graham and Yossi Ben Poref and Bob Archer and Rick Hansel and John McNulty, right? So there are a lot of people that I worked with directly that obviously had the hugest influence on me. But I think, someone that I didn't work with as directly is Akateligan. He's just an amazing person, and I think his not work specifically in terms of reading everything he read, but just him as a model, I think.
What's his name?
Akateligan. He's one of the authors of the MMPI, but he's kind of like the generation before the folks that I work more closely with.
Yeah. And then, so you have, can I ask personally, it's kind of more of a personal question.
Yeah.
But I see I think your generation kind of paved the way for our generation now. There's a lot of women like my wife who, we're thinking about having children, but also, we're either in grad school and it's going to be a busy time, or right when we're done with grad school, it's going to be a busy time. And then it's like, and then, some women choose to do away with work for a while, where they stay home or maybe go to a part-time. What was that? What was it like for you being a wife and a mother and a professional and a teacher? And how did you kind of juggle all of that? Or do you have any advice to the upcoming generation?
Yeah, it's a hard thing for sure. And for dads too, right?
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
just moms. It's a hard decision to make. My advice would be to not do what I did. I said grad school is too busy and I don't have time, and I waited
Mm,
till after grad school to have
okay.
my children. And looking back, that was a mistake. I
Mm,
think, I see a lot of folks feel like they've got to get perfect grades on everything, and they got to kind of follow the perfect, standard for being a student, and being a parent doesn't seem to fit well with that.
mm,
Um, and so I think that's the thing, is that it's actually just school. And as long as you can graduate, you don't have to be the best student or
mm,
have done every extracurricular project or whatever. So um, it's probably harder to start your career having young kids than it is to just, maybe take an extra year in grad school, maybe slow
mm.
down the pace a little bit, but to do it. So I do regret that I didn't start having kids earlier, but everybody has to make their own decision about how that's going to fit into their plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, I didn't want to not work.
Uh-huh.
So, that's something that I've done. But I mean, I think that's also why I've chosen academia in part, is I can have a pretty flexible schedule. I'm
Mm,
always home when my kids get off the bus. I have a summer break of some degree that we can spend a lot of time to Busch Gardens or whatever and
oh,
do
nice. Yeah.
the stuff that they need to be doing. So I do think it is important to have between the pair, right? Whether it's mom or dad or some combination. I think it's obviously important to have a structure that's going to work for everyone,
Hmm.
including the children, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's important to be a wife and a mother, and I hope a good DCT for y'all, an instructor for y'all. So those are just things that you have to make sure you're making enough time for.
Yeah. Um, Jumping back real quick, you just
Mhm.
said you hope being a good DCT and stuff for us all. And I was talking with some of my classmates, and there is a very common consensus that what some of the most challenging courses here at Regent are the assessment ones, but they're also the most rewarding. And when we look back to IQ or to personality, those are always the ones where we struggled, but we come out knowing that we learned just a ton.
Mhm.
And so even for that, even for you to have that kind of impact on us and on the students here, and you teaching some of the more difficult classes, but the classes that people walk away with maybe gaining the more amount of confidence, or kind of like you said, being able, there's some, just like with the maybe a session, you can walk away and like, what did I really do? There are some classes here, regrettably, that you walk away from and you're like, what did I really learn?
Uh-huh.
So, so yeah, that's good for you to, that makes for your teaching and influence and impact. I think you have the right courses.
I appreciate that. I don't know, in the middle of it though, you guys aren't so happy about it. It's
No,
only
we're not.
with the retrospect that you're able to say, that was worth it.
Yeah.
So that can be hard. But yeah, I mean, I know I challenge you, and that's not unintentional.
Mhm.
That I believe that you guys can be better than you think you can be when you're in the middle of PA.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to hold you kind of to that.
Yeah. One of my last questions was, I was going to ask, looking back on your career, um, if you could change one thing, what would it be? You kind of mentioned the thing about with the children, but is that the one thing that you would change, or do you have something else that maybe career wise?
Hmm. Not that I can think of. I'm just not that kind of person that like
Yeah.
regrets stuff,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
I'm not impulsive, so I'm pretty well thought out before I make a decision and move forward anyway.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like um there's no reason to like worry about something in the past or complain about something in the past, that
Uh-huh.
it is what it was meant to be. And even if there were problems with it, that I got something kind of from that
Yeah, good. Okay.
problem. So yeah, I mean, I have no real, regrets about where I am professionally.
Hmm. And then your energy is insurmountable. You're always running around, you're always busy. And where does that energy come from? Is that just like a love of your job, or what
I
is that?
appreciate hearing that. I appreciate the feedback. I don't know. Is that different than anybody else? Isn't everybody else? It's like a crazy place, and we're all just running around frantically, aren't we? I think part of it is I try to just be efficient because I have so many different responsibilities.
Mm,
At home and at school, right? So when I'm at school, I'm going to be really efficient with my time
mm,
so that I can get home when my kids are getting off the bus,
uh-huh.
and hopefully not have to stay up like all night still grading the papers because I didn't get it done. And I have to be 100% for them, because
Mm,
me working, I don't want that to, like I said, kind of negatively, right? It has to work for all of us.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can keep that pace up then.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Baum, this has been a real pleasure. I thank you again for taking the time.
Of course. It was good to talk with you, Daniel.
Yeah.